Well, Mondo, welcome back to the program, my friend.
It is always good to be with you.
Well, give us a quick update on Prophecy Watchers and your ministry, and then I want to jump right into the subject that's on everybody's mind, and that is the red heifer. And you've really got your finger on the pulse of that. But how you been? How things going?
It's been really busy here, Prophecy Watchers. Gary just celebrated his 87th birthday, so that's been pretty nice, and he's still going strong, which is certainly good. And been doing some traveling around with Billy Crone and Ken Michael, and we'll be heading to Europe here in the next couple weeks. So if any listeners in Europe, you can go to our website, prophecywatchers.com, and just go to the events tab, scroll down, and you'll see all the places we're going to be. We're going to be in Oxford, and then we're going to Oslo, Norway, and then in Germany. And so things are busy. We're also preparing, as you know, for our upcoming, I got it right here, for our Norman conference, October 9th through 12th. Again, it's going to be a great time. We're almost sold out on that. I think we're about 800 or 900 there. Of course, live stream will be there for people. You're going to be there as well. And it's a great time. It's actually a really nice location here in Norman because everything is so close, food and everything else. So good times, close to home. So
Yeah, nice for you.
travel anywhere. It's nice for us, yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like next year whenever you come to Colorado Springs. It's nice for us because it's right in our backyard. But yeah, looking forward to that in October. The Victory in Jesus Prophecy Conference. It's going to be awesome. A lot of great speakers. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to say about that as we get closer. But what I want to talk about today is, we're hearing all different kinds of things about the red heifers, and are they still around? Have they been sacrificed? We'd like to kind of give our audience an update here on just how things are going. So I'm going to try to just yield the mic to you. You take it away. I may interject with some questions or comments here and there, but give us a red heifer update.
Yeah, and feel free to interject. What I'm seeing right now is a lot of noise, a lot of confusion, and again, I'll just start out of the gate that there's I wrote my book. Yeah, I don't know. It came out in March of this year. It's interesting how people get upset when you mention your book. It's like, okay, look, if you get it from Prophecy Watchers, I don't make any money. Okay, I wrote the book because I want you to be informed. Okay, because there's so many layers to this, which is again why I wrote the book. Also, there's another book that was written after mine by Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. He is the main journalist for Israel 365 News. I actually just talked with him on the phone last week, and so I keep in contact with him as well. And then, so he wrote a book again from an Orthodox Jewish perspective, and what he's been covering the red heifers and the third temple movement. He's been covering that for decades. And then also Byron Stinson, who is the Christian rancher who lives in Texas. He also has a home in Bethlehem. And he wrote a book called The Hunt for the Red Heifer. So that's kind of like this trifecta of perspectives. Mine's very theological in the sense of from a New Testament perspective. Of course, Adam's coming from Orthodox, and Byron's book just kind of shares the journey. But with those three, you are going to have three different perspectives, and which of course has caused a lot of challenge and trouble. And so in that regard, what has happened recently? Well, the quick review, it really is quick, is Byron and his group, Bone Israel, which is a group that he's done a lot of things for Israel. Back in 2022, September 15th, they had brought over 5 red heifers from 2 ranches in Texas. And of course, that set the tone. And they were just under a year old. They came of age in November of 23. And then, of course, everybody's like, okay, they're of age now. What's going on? What's happening? And then, of course, as we know, October 7th happened just prior to that with the attack on Israel and the terrorism there. So it's led this whole discussion. But then recently, what you have several things. In July 1st, there was a what looked like it was a 5-second clip that was done by like Israel National News. And all you saw was a red heifer being burnt. But what you could see, though, is I remember looking at it and I was like, well, this isn't the Mount of Olives. You could tell Jerusalem, topography is very, very overt. And it's like, this is not the Mount of Olives. So where is it? So after looking at it, you could tell this was in the mountains of Samaria, which is where the cows, the red heifers are. So I might say cows and heifers, okay, just in Hebrew, there's no distinction. So if you're a rancher, please don't email me.
And let me just interject, just in case there's people watching that this is new to them. I mean, I think everybody pretty much understands it's been forefront of the Bible prophecy discussion for some time now, but the significance of the red heifers biblically and why all eyes are on these red heifers.
Good. You're a good interviewer. Okay. So the reason why this is important is because there is no specific prophecy that says a red heifer will be slaughtered. But it's an inference. It's indirect in the sense that in the Bible, Numbers 19, it gives a prescription for doing a red heifer ceremony outside the camp, which then those ashes would be used to purify the people so that they could participate in the temple. Well, we know several passages that there will be a third temple. It's going to be built. It's going to be built in Jerusalem. And so the rabbis, in anticipation that they desire this temple, and in their desire to build it and in one day to use it, they know that they need the ashes of the red heifer in order to purify the people and other things. Okay, now they can still use it a little bit, but they can't use it fully. That's their perspective. And so no doubt do any of us believe that the rabbis are wanting to build a temple to fulfill Christian prophecy. Okay, that's not the case. But we know that Christian prophecy, as well as Daniel, says that it will be there. So the idea that the preparations for the third temple have been in for 30 years, okay, and they mostly have everything absolutely ready. It's just this red heifer. It's very, very rare. So they've been thinking about it, looking for it for 20, 30 years for sure, since the late 90s. And now 5 of them show up. So that's why it becomes prophetically significant, because, oh, wow, will this other piece of the puzzle be complete? And therefore, it does show us the fact that we're even discussing these things, that we are living in prophetic times.
Yeah, it's not that they have to be here. It's not like it's a prophecy somewhere where we can say, oh, when we see this happen after this, after this, after this. It's just, it's prophetically significant. In the same way that, say, for example, Israel becoming a nation in 1948 was clearly prophetically significant. That doesn't mean that in 1946 or 1936 or the 1800s, people weren't still studying and expecting and believing Bible prophecy. It's just you see that and you go, wow, that's a big deal. Now, obviously, the reestablishment of Israel in the land in 1948 is a much bigger deal. People call it the super sign, but still, I would put this in that category of, wow, this is pretty interesting. We got 5 red heifers, and so that was why this is significant. But yeah, please continue kind of how it's unfolded since then.
So the November of 23, is when they came of age, and I was thinking, oh wow, and I remember talking to Byron in November of that time, and the big discussion back then was the ceremony is going to happen in April of 24. They were going to rally it around Passover, because Passover is a very big celebration, no doubt, in the land of Israel. And so they wanted to be a time of joy. So that was the plan. He was in the process of trying to do live streaming. He said, Mondo, pray for me. I'm trying to get live streaming for 700 million people, which, that's a big deal, because they were going to originally, they wanted to do it publicly on the Mount of Olives. They have 2 pieces of property that Bone Israel is connected with there. One of them they own for sure. And but as we know, he was doing this in November of 23, which was right after October. Well, in January of 24 is when everything changed. January of 24 is when Hamas came out publicly and said that one of the reasons they committed the atrocities of October was because of the red cows, their words. And so what it did is, and remember, this is still in the last year of the Biden administration, where Israel now is going to start responding to certainly what happened, and in order to remove Hamas from power, but they did not have really the support of the Biden administration very much, and so everything became political. Well, in order to do a ceremony on the Mount of Olives, you have to have the permission of the government, of the Israeli government, And at that point, they were absolutely not going to allow anything that would throw gasoline on the fire politically, because there's no doubt Netanyahu was already being threatened by Biden not to be getting certain weapons. They weren't, they had already purchased them. They weren't delivered. So no way was he going to try to ostracize the Biden administration. And so everything went down to nothing. And then, of course, as we know, 24 ended. Trump came in. Trump is very friendly to Israel, no doubt. And so there was a resurgence now of discussions about, hey, now's the time. Trump's the Cyrus. He's the anointed, he's the anointed, the Gentile anointed one of Isaiah 44 and 45. And so you see that discussion re-engaging. When can we have the ceremony? So that has been for, again, most now of 2025. What are we at? We're in August now, and a lot of discussion. Well, so the thing where it's come up recently is, in the midst of that, if you asked me 4 or 5 months ago and you look at some of the interviews, talking to Byron, no doubt, several of the red heifers had become disqualified. They're going on. They were born in 21, so they're going on 4 years now. Several of them had become disqualified by having more non-red hairs. And so fast forward now, he had told me, I was with him actually in Kansas. I don't know, it was April, May, at a museum. And he said, hey, Byron, what's the update? And he said, well, we still have 2. So there were 2 that were still fully, or at least preliminarily qualified back then. But here's the thing, July 1st, they performed this ceremony. They took one of the red heifers and they burned it in Samaria, according to all the protocols found in the book of Numbers, chapter 19. And then they recorded it all, and it's good. They're going to be sharing a full marketing, if you want to say it that way, or video on this coming soon. If you go to his Facebook page, people can see now a longer video that he's put out, which is part of the filming that they did. The first video, again, was 5 seconds. That's all you saw. But later he did another one. And so, but then right next to that, the Temple Institute on their Facebook page, they come out and they say, all the red heifers are disqualified. So now you have this, well, he said, she said.
Now,
and that's where we're at.
Even if the ceremony that Barry did, would it qualify? Because I thought you said it had to be on the Mount of Olives.
Okay, so that brings up. So here's Byron, right? Byron is puts this video out, and now of course there's lots of conversations, and he of course he loves the Temple Institute people. He's very friendly, and he works with many of them. But let me back up just a hair, because it was back in April, May. One of the chief rabbis, like the chief guy of the Temple Institute, who is in charge of all of the oral traditions, the Mishnaic research as it relates to the red heifer. He had an interview in Hebrew, and Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz, he wrote an article and said, and the rabbi specifically said, we're unsure whether we have any qualified red heifers. And that was where it really started, because. And so I interviewed Adam after that, and said he didn't say they were 100% sure. He just said they were unsure. And he's like, because you got to speak rabbi, okay? They're not going to lie. Obviously they're not going to lie, but they're not necessarily going to provide all the information. And what he said was accurate. The only way that you know whether one of these heifers is pure is the moment before you take it up and put it on the pyre to burn it. So sometimes if it's really bad, that you could say, well, but maybe that hair falls out tomorrow, and then it becomes. So you see, there's ambiguity there until the moment before. And so when they came out with that of course caused a lot of reaction. None of the red heifers, they said, well, we don't know that. Byron's saying there's still 2. Well, then the Temple Institute came out officially and said, no, all of those are disqualified. Well, then Byron he's got to respond. And so what you just asked, the right question, is what Byron is saying. And again, I've scoured all of his Facebook comments, so I'm quoting him accurately. is he said, well, there's different opinions. And as we know, and this is what I write about in my book, that even right now, if you were to go, for example, if you were to go to Israel, is it okay for a Jew to go up on the Temple Mount? Well, this rabbi says no. The chief rabbi says no. That was always been the thing going back to 1967. But then all of a sudden, going back in the last probably 10 years, that started changing. This group of rabbis said, we're going up. It's a commandment. And so now you have a disagreement, which you could tell me, what was it like in the first century with the Jews, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, so they don't. So, but I guess what I'm asking is, what does Byron say? I said Barry earlier. Obviously, I meant Byron. What does Byron say the purpose of this ceremony was that he recorded?
So it's interesting if you look at the sequence of events. It's crystal clear. I mean, I have the quotes right here that early on in his early quotes, he says this was a practice. Okay. And then later he says and this is what's causing a lot of the reaction amongst people that are watching this, prophecy watchers, is he now is saying it was a real ceremony. So it was a real ceremony. But then he also said, but people say, well, but you said it was a practice. So that's causing some confusion. So in fact, it was a real ceremony. Okay. Both are correct by his own words. It was a real ceremony in that it was a real heifer. It was done by a real priest, a Kohen, who was purified, or who never became impure, because in order for the priest, you have to be pure according to the ritual sense. This is one of the priests that's never been born in a hospital. He's never walked on the ground in the sense of become ritually defiled. And so there's very few of those. So it was done by one of them. The rabbis were there. It wasn't just this Gentile Christian guy named Byron doing it. He was involved with the rabbis, but they did it in Samaria. Okay, so it brings it up to your question. And what he said was, this was a real ceremony done according to the Torah. Now, why did he say that? And this is where, again, I tried to share in my book to say, listen, guys, I want you to think like a rabbi, not like a Christian for a minute, or like a Pharisee. The Pharisees, as we know, Mark 7, Matthew 15, they believed very clearly that the tradition of the elders, that's what Jesus uses, the tradition of the elders, or the oral Torah, is equivalent in authority to the written Bible. So now you have the Mishnah, which is the oral traditions, and you have the written Bible. For a rabbinic Jew, there is no distinction. Okay? So what Byron said is, well, if you take Numbers 19, according to the Torah, it just says outside the camp. Originally, it was most likely done in the wilderness wanderings, right? Outside of the camp, the main camp where the tabernacle was. You just had to do it outside there. So there was no prescription in the book of Numbers that it had to be anywhere specific except outside the camp. So what Byron is saying is, well, it's outside the camp. So we did it. It's a real ceremony. But I thought you said it was a practice. Well, it is. So this is the kind of that's causing confusion.
So he's saying it's a real ceremony, but he's not saying it's the ceremony that resulted in the ashes that will then be used to purify the people in the temple?
Basically, yes. Okay. So as people have asked him further questions, and again, I'm scouring and hearing him, looking at his responses, because he's very busy right now. I've tried to interview him, but he's really, really busy, and so I can't interview him directly. So I've just taken which is actually very helpful to get it written. What he said was the ashes that they did in this real ceremony, he recognizes it was not done on the Mount of Olives. We have given the ashes to the Temple Institute. They have them. He said, quote, I'll quote it here, okay? He says, ashes used to purify the priests for the building of the temple would be best from the ashes done on the Mount of Olives ceremony. There will be more. Like there will be more ceremonies. Okay? So he says, as far as the place relating to Samaria, that because it was done in Samaria, that made it a practice. Okay? So he knows that, and this is important for people. So people are running out and say, it's done, here we are, prophecy is being fulfilled. And I would say, hold on a minute. I'm not trying to be a downer here. I'm trying to help you understand that some of the rabbis, according to Byron, believed that this red heifer was pure. It fulfilled the requirements. Okay, now, what he didn't say there was, did it fulfill the requirements of the Torah, of the Bible? Because the Bible doesn't say how many hairs non-red hairs is supposed to have. So it's ambiguous. But let me reiterate for people, okay? For a rabbinic Jewish person, the Bible and the Mishnah are equal, okay? We don't think that way as Christians, okay? So for them, with the Mishnah, and there's a whole chapter in the Mishnah. It's called the Parah Adumah. It's called the red cow or the red heifer. In there, it's very, very clear talking about, again, I put all this in the book so that people could get their head around it. I want you to think like a Jew, a rabbinic Jew for a moment. It says they have the discussions in there, basically more than one non-red hair together in the same follicle is disqualifying. Okay. It also says crystal clear in the oral tradition, it has to be on the Mount of Olives. Okay. That's what they say. So for somebody to say, oh, this is the real ceremony, it is not the real ceremony. It's the real ceremony according to the Bible, because the Bible is ambiguous. But it doesn't fulfill all of the requirements, which, again, for a rabbinic Jew, they will not leave this undone. That's why Byron's saying, look, they're going to have it this was one, but there's going to be another one, and it's going to be on the Mount of Olives, because in order they want to make sure, he recognizes that they're going to want to make sure that box is checked in order to have those ashes be used to purify the upcoming temple building and the projects and the priests. And so people are ahead of the game right now. They don't understand that this box cannot be unchecked.
So the $1 million question for me is, why would Byron do a practice ceremony with a qualifying red heifer? I mean, it seems like we've been waiting decades to get one that's pure, that's qualified. Why would you then use that for a practice ceremony? Or did he? I mean, is it possible that he used one of the disqualified heifers to do this dry run? Or, I mean, I just don't understand why. It's not like you got a whole line of these,
right
on the shelf ready to pull off when you get ready to do the real ceremony,
Only Byron can answer that motive. Okay. I'll try to read into it as much as safe is safe, but we do know, he originally, like if people go to Byron's Facebook, or if you go to Build the Temple, I think it's either Build the Third Temple or buildthetemple.com. They have a video, which is I kind of find surprising. They have a video that was done. They have a news article from August 2nd. That was before all this latest stuff on his Facebook, August 6th, 7th, and 8th. Well, they have a news article on there that says clearly that this was a practice ceremony. And I'm like, so Byron is sharing this information that it was a real ceremony, which again is true. He's not lying. He's saying, look, this was a real ceremony with a real red heifer that, according to some of the rabbis, was pure. It was qualified. But it also was a practice in anticipation of the one on the Mount of Olives. And so again, but why? Well, one of the things that he's doing is he is very eager, and he'll tell you this, that I'm not here to sit around. I'm here to help get things done. God wants us to be people of action. So on that regard, he is looking to create more interest in building the temple, building the third temple. Again, people know the website. But I will tell you this. If there was only one left, I don't think he would have used it in this Samaria one. Samaria ceremony. But for the past few months, he's told me that there's two. He said that there's definitely two, maybe even three, that are still qualified. He said the third one, this was a few months ago, he said it's just not as red. So I don't think that he would have wasted, if you wanted to say it that way, one of them in this practice ceremony, this real practice ceremony in Samaria. I don't think he would have done that. But he also did say, there's a quote here, and then I'll give it back to you. He said, there's more heifers, that we have more heifers in Texas. So there's more heifers in Texas. They have.
So
as a backup.
So after all these years of trying to find that needle in a haystack, now we have a surplus, it sounds like. So much so that you can even use one to practice, which, I mean, obviously it's just the whole thing seems a little confusing. And, obviously, Byron better than anybody, and you're kind of the best one to sort of interpret this. And you've done a great job of sort of just laying out there as much as you can. I mean, there's things we just don't know, but the conspiracy side of me wonders if the whole practice thing was just a decoy. And so I'll ask this question. Will the general public even know when the actual ceremony finally does take place? Is that something that's going to be known, or could they do it in secret?
So that's a great question. And this is something that people, I'll just be blunt, people refuse to accept this. Okay. And they're excited for prophecy, as I am. I'm excited for the Lord to come back. Okay. But some people are just adamant. No, it was done in secret. And I'm like, listen, that is impossible, because either they're unaware of the situation, or they're unaware, they've never been to Israel. They've never been there to see it. Again, even Byron himself said this was a full ceremony in preparation for another one on the Mount of Olives. See, he knows that the only way that there's even a chance that all of the rabbis would even agree to it is if it fulfills the oral tradition, which says clearly Mount of Olives. Now, they have, according to as well, the oral tradition, you have to be able to look down, like at the time when the temple was there, Jesus' day. It was on the Mount of Olives. You had to be able to look down into, with the doors were open, and see inside, basically the inner sanctum of the Holy of Holies, or at least the holy place. So because the veil was there, so you couldn't see, of course, into the Holy of Holies, but you had to be able to look into there. So you had to have an elevation to be able to look down. So in the same way, today, you couldn't just go over on the bottom of the Kidron Valley, in the Kidron Valley on the Mount of Olives, because you couldn't see up over the wall. So they have two pieces of property today which allow them to see down over the wall into the Temple Mount area. That is required. So, but in order to do that, it has to be done on the Mount of Olives. Now, those places, I've been all through there. I've actually stood right there over where they're at. And the fact of the matter is, you can't do anything in secret there. I mean, we're talking about a gigantic bonfire. This thing is 1,000 degrees, and people can see the video. This is a huge bonfire, smokes up, and it'd be like going into a neighborhood, and all of a sudden you see smoke going up, and you're like, well, who's burning something? And then, of course, the fire department's going to be called. This is in an area that is surrounded by Arabs. Okay, so the police got to be there. The fire department is going to be notified so that it doesn't spread. There's no way this could be done in secret, not without the police and all the people being called. But people just no. I refuse to believe that they did it in secret.
Yeah, I mean, except for the part about it being in Samaria, you might wonder, well, is this all just a for lack of a better word, a smokescreen, that maybe this was the real one, but they're just saying, no, it's practice just to kind of keep it. We know that, certainly in government, people lie because, they think it's in the best interest of the public or whatever. But the fact is, it was in Samaria, and they admit that. He admits that. It can't be the one. He tells you it's a practice one. It was a real one, but a practice one.
Mm-hmm.
And according to what you were looking at in terms of his statements, there's at least one, maybe two others that meet the qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does the temple doesn't have to be built before the ceremony? Obviously, they can do the ceremony anytime and then hang on to the ashes, right?
Yes, because this is really important, and they will be very adamant. This is not a sacrifice. Sacrifices take place on the altar, which is in the temple precincts, right? This is a ceremony. It's a slaughter. It's a burning of an animal that has to take place outside of the camp. So, in fact, it can't even happen on the Temple Mount because it needs to happen outside of that. And so, for them, what has been told to me by Adam, Eliyahu Berkowitz, he said, look, there's several of the sacrifices. If we built the temple, he said, if we built it tomorrow, there's several of the sacrifices which we can do, even without the red heifer ashes. But we can't do all of them. And so our goal, again, for an Orthodox Jew is what? They want to obey all of the commandments. So if you ask him, well, what about this? And he'll say, look, our goal is to obey all of the commandments. And so in order to do that, we need to have the ashes of the red heifer in order to fulfill all of the rest of the sacrifices and everything else. So in that regard, the ashes, they could do the ceremony, hold on to the ashes until the geopolitical climate happens when they are able to start building the temple. Or what I envision they would do is they would immediately erect the tabernacle tent, and then they would begin to build the permanent structure around it. But they'd still start performing the ritual services of the tabernacle.
Yeah, so just to be crystal clear from my perspective, when you're saying that according to the Mishnah, it's got to be not only on the Mount of Olives, but it's got to be up from a vantage point where they can see down to where if the doors are open, they're seeing in it. That's not to say that at the time of the red heifer ceremony, the temple has to be in existence.
Correct.
They can do the ceremony up there from the vantage point where it would be looking down on the Temple Mount, but then hang on to the ashes for however long it takes until the temple is eventually built, right?
100%. And they, even back before, again, the other red heifers that are disqualified, they're not going to make steak out of them. They're going to put them in the breeding program. These are females that have never been pregnant, and they have an Israeli breeding program. And of course, as we know, there's still going on in Texas as well. And so there's no lack. Like you said, there's now an abundance of at least possibilities because of the genetic intentionality of what's been happening.
Interesting. So we're about out of time, but I want to come back to something you said that in quoting Byron about how his passion for this, and he said we need to be a people of action and so forth. And I know you and I have talked about this before, and you touch on it in your book, but I mean, should we be eager and enthusiastic about building the Antichrist's temple? I mean, it is the Antichrist's temple. It's not the temple that the Lord's going to take the throne in, right?
Oh, there's no doubt. And this is why I quoted you. You have a quote in my book too, where I quoted, I don't know, a couple dozen different speakers. What do you think? Should Christians be involved in this, et cetera, et cetera? And so there was a whole range of opinions on there. But what you will see, and I address this in the book as well, because some people will say in 2 Thessalonians 2, it describes, again, in Holy Scripture, Paul uses the word that the Antichrist will sit in the temple of God. And so he doesn't call it the temple of the Antichrist, he calls it the temple of God, right? And so does that mean God legitimizes it? And so that's a whole, I give an answer in there talking about the different possibilities of how to massage that or how to understand it. But nevertheless, what you'll see right now is like Byron will say, and I saw that exact quote in one of his comments, was this called the temple of God. And so we are simply bringing forth, helping that temple, the temple of God. Bible never calls it the temple of Antichrist, his words, the temple of God to be built. So we're simply helping our Jewish brothers in order to bring a house of prayer for all nations. So in his mind, he has a desire for unity and to bring that. And so, but as you said, and I mean, you could also answer, and how you answered it in the book is, as a pastor, what do you say to your congregation? Should I give my money to build the thirdtemple.com? Pastor, what do you say? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough issue. I mean, it's easier to just think at the macro level that anytime the stage is being set and things happen that are preparing the way for prophecy to be fulfilled, I mean, that's exciting, right? But that doesn't mean there's always this tension when we know bad things are going to happen. For example, if I'm an expert technologist and someone says, "Will you help me develop the mark of the beast?" Well, I know that the sooner the mark of the beast is here, the sooner the rapture happens, because we're not going to be here with it. So am I hastening the rapture by signing on to help develop the mark of the beast? I mean, that's an extreme example, but the point is there are bad things to come in Bible prophecy from a human perspective. And ultimately, it climaxes with the triumphant return of Christ at the Battle of Armageddon to take the throne and usher in the kingdom of peace, righteousness, and justice. So should we participate in hastening the things that are setting the stage for the reign of the Antichrist? I mean, the simplest answer is no. Let's just let it happen. It's kind of, I know we want to have our cake and eat it too. We want these things to happen because it means we're getting close to the end, but I don't have to necessarily, support it financially. So that, I mean, it may sound like a cop-out, but.
Well, I mean, each person, this is between them and the Lord, right? I mean, we can only talk about what I would do or what you would do personally. And let me just remind people is that, look, and I talk about this in the book. I tried to be very thorough. What does the New Testament say about the red heifer? Well, the red heifer appears in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 13 and 14. So, as well as in Hebrews 13. So, this is what I would say. This is what we know. Jesus is the final sacrifice. Okay, 100%. There is no third temple that is needed according to New Testament theology at all. Any sacrifices that would happen in a coming third temple, again, seem to be an affront against the finality of the book of Hebrews. I mean, I find it interesting. Here is a book that was written to Jewish people. It was written to the Hebrew people to say, listen, the temple, especially Hebrews chapter 8, the temple is obsolete and it's soon to vanish away, which it did. Right after the book of Hebrews was written, it was destroyed in 70 AD. And he's describing how all of the sacrifices in the Old Testament, including the ceremony of the red heifer, pointed to the Lord Jesus and his fulfillment of all of those rituals and those systems. So from a New Testament perspective, no sacrifices are needed at all in any future temple. And what we do know is that this temple that is coming is going to be defiled by the Antichrist. We know that Matthew 24:15, 2 Thessalonians 2:4, and it also is going to be removed. The abomination of desolation is going to be removed, according to Daniel 12, and Jesus the Messiah will build a new millennial temple that is way different than this one. This one's going to be taken out of the way, and the new one, according to Ezekiel 40 through 48, is gigantic. It's a mile square if you just look at the overall complex and the courts. So this coming temple is not going to be the millennial one. We know that for sure. And so when you look at all the angles, Jesus is the final answer.
No question, but just to clarify, that's not to say that there won't be the proper time and place for sacrifices in the millennial temple.
For sure.
System.
Yep.
Right. It's just that these sacrifices, as you said, the Jewish people are going to be doing it in unbelief and complicit with the Antichrist to do it in the first half. And then it's only when he desecrates that temple and shows himself to be the Antichrist that they recognize, wait a minute, what have we done? And 1/3 of them then turn to God in belief and end up being regathered into the land at the second coming. It's amazing. I just finished doing a podcast on the temple, the coming kingdom and the temple, Ezekiel 40 to 48. And, I remember as a kid, I grew up in Houston, high school and college in Houston. And so the Astrodome was kind of the big thing. And I remember when the Superdome was built in New Orleans, and you could take the entire Astrodome, outside walls and all, and set it on the floor of the Superdome. And when the Astrodome was built, everybody's like, oh, this is one of the great wonders of the world. This is an amazing thing. But over time, of course, I don't even know if the Superdome's still around at this point. These stadiums just get more and more elaborate. But nothing is going to compare to the glory and beauty when the Shekinah does come back into Ezekiel's temple, as described in Ezekiel 40 to 48, when Christ is on the throne. So where do we go from here? We'll close it out with that question.
I think what I would tell is I just want to encourage people to be cautious. Okay. Don't go running into something, get all the facts first. And there's a lot of confusion out there again, and people are grabbing on. Again, we're all excited. We're excited to see prophetic developments. I know I am, but I think sometimes we can be too eager in doing that, because then we begin to share things that aren't accurate, or they're not again, they're not based on a full understanding of what the Bible says, or even understanding of the prophetic developments. Again, even understanding the Mishnah and the Bible. So when you see some of the stuff, people say, "Look, prophecy is being fulfilled. There it is," and then what happens? Well, then let's just fast forward for a hypothetical. Let's say the genuine ceremony, okay, another real ceremony, a non-practice ceremony happens on the Mount of Olives. People are going to go, well, what about the one in Samaria? I thought that one was real. So you see how it creates a lot of confusion here, and we want to just tell people, hey, again, be sober-minded. Okay, don't be led by emotion in that regard. You can still be excited, but be cautious in your words before we start going out there and announcing that we've arrived at the end and the rapture's next week.
Amen. Yeah, we don't want to be watching for the smoke. We want to be listening for the trumpet, right? I mean, that's really why we're here. We're to be eagerly awaiting the return of the Lord, and it's exciting to see these things, certainly. And the stage is being set like never before in so many ways, and this is one of them. But yeah, keep it all in perspective. So, Mondo, outstanding as always. Really appreciate you, my friend. And prophecywatchers.com, that's how folks can get in touch with you. And by the way, I encourage people unashamedly to get your book. I mean, you're a lot like we are. We give a ton of our stuff away. We're very gracious in that regard, but obviously it costs money to print books. And so, we're not ashamed to say we sell them, but hey, that's the best book on the market out there about this subject. It's exegetical, it's biblical, and you've got some great sources. And so I encourage folks to get it. They can get it where? prophecywatchers.com?
That's the best place, again, if they want to support us, or you can get it on Amazon as well.
Amazon is, if you feel like Jeff Bezos needs some more money, then get it at Amazon. Mondo, thank you, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Good to be here.
God bless everyone, and have a great rest of the day.